Unfortunately, the NBA appears to get a bad rap around the country for its players being thugs and gangsters, even though most of the players with rap sheets haven't done much worse than your average Joe. However, a few players in the league have dealt with more significant issues both before and during their NBA careers. So in this video, we have the players in the league who have had the most legal issues in the last few years. So let's get into it. First up is Kendrick Perkins. Perkins was drafted by the Boston Celtics and played in Beantown until the 2010-2011 season. Perkins went on to play for OKC the following year, helping lead the Thunder to the NBA Finals in 2012. Following his 4-year stint in Oklahoma, Perkins signed with the Cleveland Cavaliers, where he reached the Finals in 2015 and again later in 2018. Perkins then announced his retirement from the NBA on April 15, 2019. During the lockout, when NBA players had little to do productively with their time, Kendrick Perkins was one of the few players who got into trouble with the law. Perkins was arrested in a Texas nightclub in August of 2011 while intoxicated and attempting to fight the club's manager. He was then pushed out of the club's back door, where he continued to yell and fight with more people. Next up, Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry was convicted for his actions at a charity game in Las Vegas, in one of the more interesting cases during the lockout. During the game, Lowry became so enraged by the calls made by a female official that he verbally abused her and ended up throwing a basketball at her. Lowry was sentenced to 100 hours of community service and an impulse control management course as a result of the incident. Sebastian Telfair. Telfair was born in Brooklyn, son to a veteran of the Vietnam War. He attended Abraham Lincoln High School while living in the Surfside Gardens project in Brooklyn's Coney Island, where he became one of the country's most highly regarded and sought-after high school basketball prospects. Before Delante West, there was Sebastian Telfair, and he doesn't even have the whole bipolar defense. When Telfair struggled with playing time with the Celtics in 2007, he was arrested in New York for driving 77 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone. And to make matters worse, Telfair was arrested for gun possession after the arresting officer discovered a .45 caliber handgun under the passenger seat. Sebastian was also later caught with a loaded gun in a pillowcase on the team plane while with the Portland Trail Blazers. Big Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace, a former Detroit Pistons player, was arrested for leaving the scene of a car accident in February of 2014, and after pleading no contest, he was sentenced to a year in jail. Wallace crashed his SUV through a wooden fence, and according to police reports, he fled the crime scene on foot. Wallace was originally sentenced to 1 year in prison. However, the county judge suspended all but 2 days of that sentence. Isaiah Ryder. Isaiah Ryder was arrested approximately 832 times while in the NBA, and the fact that he was able to stay in the league for as long as he did is the league's most embarrassing aspect. He was convicted of 5th-degree assault for kicking a sports bar manager, was caught with weed more times than a college kid with some extra money in his pocket, had an illegal cell phone charge, and a public gambling charge while playing for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He played in the league for 9 seasons, leaving a sour taste in the mouth of every team that dared to try and turn him around. How he kept landing on professional basketball teams over and over for that long is beyond us. Jason Kidd. Kidd entered the NBA in 1994 and quickly established himself as one of the game's most gifted and respected point guards. His ability to see the floor and make dazzling passes propelled him into the ranks of the sport's brightest young stars. And Kidd, who was so clearly advanced early in his career, never stopped evolving. So it's easy to see why it seems like a long time since anyone has mentioned Jason Kidd's arrest in 2001. But it was a reasonably serious conviction back then. Kidd was charged with spousal abuse and pleaded no contest, paying a $200 fine and being ordered to attend anger management classes. The irony here is that when the two divorced 6 years later, Kidd filed a restraining order against his wife, alleging that she was the one abusing him at that time. Delante West. Delante West is an all-around interesting person, a young man who had a shot at becoming a real star in the league cut short by mental health. In 2009, while speeding on his motorcycle in Maryland, cops discovered several handguns and a shotgun in a guitar case. West pleaded guilty on 2 counts of gun possession and received an 8-month house arrest sentence, 40 hours of community service, and 2 months of probation. Not long after, Delante West was arrested yet again. Officers from the Fairfax County Police Department in Virginia were called to a local parking lot around 5:53 p.m. on October 15th after witnesses saw the former NBA player trespassing in a vehicle. Cops say they found West near the parking lot when they arrived, but he became combative when they tried to put cuffs on him. He was booked on 4 misdemeanor charges. DeShawn Stevenson. DeShawn Stevenson had been arrested twice in his NBA career, once when he was younger and once more recently. DeShawn Stevenson, a young guard for the Utah Jazz, was accused and convicted of statutory rape of a 14-year-old girl when he was 20. Stevenson was convicted and sentenced to community service for a misdemeanor charge that was reduced from a felony. And more recently, Stevenson was arrested for public intoxication, which was treated a little bit more leniently. When did he get picked up? Just 2 days after the Dallas Mavericks won their first championship in June of 2011. Antoine Walker. Antoine Walker was arrested for writing bad checks due to his massive debts to Caesar's Palace. More than anything, this is an embarrassment for the league. It's embarrassing that David Stern and the league, or even the Players Association, don't do enough to teach these young multimillionaires about money management. Too often, you hear about a guy who made millions of dollars in a decade or less only to find himself broke soon after retiring. Even Allen Iverson, who earned approximately $2 quadrillion in the NBA, was rumored to have gone bankrupt following his divorce and retirement. Karon Butler. Karon Butler was born and raised in Racine, Wisconsin, and had a difficult childhood. When Butler was 16, it appeared he would spend most of his life in prison. He'd been arrested 15 times for minor offenses before even turning 15 years old, even being sentenced to 1 year in prison for possessing firearms and cocaine. Most young people who begin their lives in this manner will spend most of their lives in prison, or worse. Butler, on the other hand, had a different path. His potential as a person and as a basketball player was evident from an early age. Despite his ability as a basketball player, Butler, like many other kids in his neighborhood, struggled to make a name for himself outside of the local police station. But Butler returned to Washington Park High School after being released from prison. He then enrolled at Maine Central Institute, where he was offered a scholarship to play at UConn by Jim Calhoun. Butler attended UConn for 2 seasons before declaring for the 2002 NBA Draft. Meta Sandiford Artest. He used to be known simply as Ron Artest, then Meta World Peace, and now finally Meta Sandiford Artest. And before he became the more level-headed individual that he is today, Artest struggled with controlling his anger. First, Artest was tried and convicted in 2004 for his role in the Pacers-Pistons brawl, infamously known as the Malice in the Palace, for which he was sentenced to community service and a year of probation. The following incident occurred in 2007 after Artest had joined the Sacramento Kings. Artest would plead no contest to a spousal abuse charge from March of that year. As a result of the arrest, Artest was sentenced to 100 hours of community service, a 10-day work program with the sheriff's office, a $600 fine, and counseling. Is it any coincidence that Artest is only 1 letter away from arrest? And finally, Allen Iverson. Iverson was a dual-sport athlete at Bethel High School in Hampton, Virginia. He was named the Associated Press High School Player of the Year in both football and basketball and won the Division V AAA Virginia State Championship in both sports. Iverson played college basketball for the Georgetown Hoyas for 2 years, setting the school record for career scoring average and winning Big East Defensive Player of the Year both years. One of the major arrests involving Allen Iverson was when he was 17 and convicted as part of a mob maiming. But his 2002 arrest is the most embarrassing and indefensible, because he allegedly threw his wife out of the house during a fight and then threatened 2 men with a gun while looking for her afterwards. He was charged with assault, weapons offenses, and terrorist threats. Iverson was one of the most exciting players in the league at the time, but he already had a reputation as a bad boy, and this only added to it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.